Item 11 is file 191456, a resolution requesting the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners to collaborate with the Police Department and the Health Department to develop and present a plan to the Common Council for information sharing following critical incidents. This is also sponsored, the lead sponsor is Alderwoman Cogs. Go ahead, Alderwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, during budget, one of the things that came up during the police department's testimony was they were questioned about the critical information sharing and who comes to what meetings, and then when the health department came, we asked similar questions, and it was just a lot of rigmarole about who's coming to what meetings or why not, or why certain information, oh, it's on the internet already. Just, it was a lot of mess, and I did this footnote so that there would be clarity through the mess. One thing we know is that with the departments working together in general, the people of the city of Milwaukee will be better served. But particularly for the work that Office of Violence Prevention does and the very specific work that MPD does, the sharing of the critical information data makes all the difference in the world. So although I've done general footnotes about generally working together, very specifically, I wanted to make sure that there is a clear, concise way of information sharing for critical incidents between the health department and and MPD, so that there's no, it's on the internet, they can get it, they don't need to come to this meeting, they can go to that meeting. It's none of that. This is how we're going to do it. We both agree this is how information will be shared, and that's how it can be shared moving forward. So my intention here was just to get a process set out that all sides agree to, so that the information can be shared and the people of the city of Milwaukee can be served.
Very good. Who wants to go first? Well, let's hear from the head of emergency management. Go ahead.
So a couple of the staples within emergency management, the foundation, there's a couple of things. So mass communication, so emergency communication internally. So that's a component of this. Continuity of government and continuity of operations. You've heard me speak about this a couple of times. It's a top priority of mine. These projects are already underway. Will involve you all very soon. And a component of those continuity of governments is understanding after these critical incidents. Okay, so after action reports, understanding we're doing gap analysis and improvement plans. So those are tenets of emergency management, and that's where I believe I fit in best on this. So in the process, like Alderwoman Cox said, that we develop and we implement here for critical incidents, and that might depend on who you ask and how we define that, but that's my role in the big picture.
Okay, let's hear from the
Chair.
Go ahead, Alderman.
Can I ask for an example? Like, give me an example and how the message would transcend through the different departments.
Okay.
And what's your name?
Kyle Meyerhouse.
When did you start?
November 19th.
What day?
November 19th.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
You have a very important position.
I do. Appreciate that. So let's give a generic example. If there is a security-related event, maybe a suspicious package, okay? Initially, we use a mass communication software and a procedure to notify all the stakeholders involved, including everyone here. From that point forward, we move with the set SOPs and the plans that we have, and we follow through with emergency procedures, and everyone goes home. But post that incident, what's important, and it begins from the start. Obviously, we mentioned the news and other media outlets where we want to get ahead of that. Well, post these events, what's really important, at least from my perspective, is that we include all the agencies involved in the response and all those impacted, and we judge their actions off of what actually happened, right? So, or excuse me, the plans that we have in place. So we say, okay, if you were supposed to go left and you went right, okay, if you were supposed to notify agency A, B, and C, but you notified D, E, and F, we base that off the plans, and we build improvement plans from those action items. That's how I see myself as far as emergency management, homeland security, and communications, being directly involved with this.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that sounded reactionary. What about prevention or preparation? Can you do it as an emergency manager? Can you set up a plan for preparation, or do you have to wait till something happens then react so it'll be better the next time?
No, so there's many, but is my opinion, and this is something that's already underway. There's two ways to do this: is including everyone in the training and the plan development. Okay, that sometimes I think that falls to the wayside is. The emergency management personnel and others, they develop a plan and sort of push it on everyone else. Well, that's not my philosophy. My philosophy is to get everyone's input right away, because I don't know how you operate. I don't know what you need or how, the procedures that you follow. So that's one way. And the second way, too, is to, I think this is a part of the intention of this legislation, is that the procedure in place is proactive in nature, and that I'll give you another example. If there's maybe a weather event like coming this Saturday, instead of waiting for the snow to fall and us to deal with the ramifications, we get ahead of that like we do already. But I'd like to bring some additional maybe tools and tricks to the procedure where we can best forward lean into those expected problems coming from those events. That is technology for communication, that's documentation, and that's the plans themselves.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Very good. Since this resolution calls for the Fire and Police Commission to work with all these departments and present then subsequently a plan to the Common Council, let's hear from the Commission. I'm assuming all these departments are willing to work together and develop this plan. Director, let's hear from you and how you intend on moving forward and when you can present this plan to us.
Well, I think having Kyle is instrumental to this, because he is working not just on critical incidents for the city, but obviously as we prepare for the DNC. So I think this is great timing for us to get in a room and begin some brainstorming around what do we want to do. And I think we all want to see the success of DNC, but we all want the success of the city as a whole beyond July. And so I think our plan as FPC is to begin setting up some meetings to begin to figure out and brainstorm ways that we are going to be able to answer critical incidents, and I will probably have Kyle lead that charge and be able to report back not just to the commission, but to you as a council, but getting the input from MPD and the health department as well.
Very good. And within 2 months?
Kyle, 2 months?
Yes.
All right, 2 months.
Mr. Chair?
Very good. Go ahead, Alderwoman.
I appreciate all that the Homeland Security Director shared with us, and I think that's great. But I just want to be 100% clear about what the intention was behind this particular file. I think that information is great, but I want to make sure that some focus is put on where it came from. And it came from communication between MPD and the health department, particularly the critical incidents of which this was speaking was more of the shootings and major things that occurred, because the direct questions and conversations we had with both the health department and MPD were about those type of instances and their level of communication sharing and how they did it about those things, because the knowledge of it, of what was going on with those particular cases, impacts the work that each of them do. So the necessity for them to share in real time for as much as possible the data with each other on those things that they're able to, and having a process for that, whether it's the meetings, whether it's, you talk to this person, whatever, whether it's online stuff, whatever, because each one said different things, that process needs to be there. So I don't mind it being thought of more, in a larger way with the Homeland angle, but I don't want to lose sight of when these things happen, MPD is going to do X, Y, and Z. When these things happen, Office of Violence Prevention they need to contact this person. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever those things are, I don't want to lose sight of the very specific communication between those departments.
Very good.
Mr. Chair.
You're familiar or you understand the intent?
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think definitely we'll include the Office of Violence Prevention as you look at the different scenarios and ways that we need to collaborate with each other and the point people that need to be assigned to those.
Very good. Alderman, did you have a comment?
Yeah, because that was the concern, the discussion and where information derived from was it'll be a shooting, somebody will get killed. And the people, the victims would look to retaliate. But the Office of Violence Prevention didn't have the information to go to the family to help prevention, to help de-escalate the issue, the situation. So somehow there's a disconnect between the Office of Violence Prevention and what they're saying and the information that they need, and the Milwaukee Police Department, and them receiving and them providing the information that they need, that Office of Violence Prevention needs, or vice versa, in order to prevent additional crimes or additional killings. The point is, if something happens, we need to work together to prevent anything else from happening, and everybody should be working together on the same page with the same information, as much as can be disclosed. So that's where it really came from. I understand the emergency part and the high-level technical stuff, but this is kind of, I don't know if you were here, but this is about specific violence prevention. If something happens, somebody get hurt, we want to prevent more, we want to prevent violence. So that's what this is about. I mean, you can do the technical thing, but this is about violent neighborhood, going to talk to certain people in the neighborhood and having relationships with people in the neighborhood and preventing more violence. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Very good. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, Nick, we were here during the budget time, and Assistant Banks said we're going to collaborate with OVP. We're going to figure out what that plan is. Now that he's retiring, what does that look like?
Well, there have been meetings. I think ultimately the devil's in the details. We certainly have a lot of overlap among the police department, the Fire and Police Commission, including emergency management, and the health department. And there are certainly intersections that involve two or all three of us. And I think that's really what needs to happen, is discussing of where that overlap applies. Definitionally, and I'm glad that Mr. Meyerhouse made this comment, is that we have our own definition of critical incidents. It's not the definition, but we have our own, and every department has their own interpretation. There are certain critical incidents that fall within our SOP that have nothing to do with anybody else. I think, I don't think that's an extraordinary statement, but there are certainly ones that do. And there are going to be capacity limitations on all of our departments of what we can, and not only just share, but what we have the ability to address. So ultimately, I think I'm going to end with the beginning comments of this is something to sit down and talk about. And I think it really comes down to calling balls and strikes on what types of incidents have those types of overlap. I think having Kyle here is great. I think it's nice, having that position filled, and I think there's an opportunity for us to work on some of those Homeland Security things, which I appreciate might not have been the intent, but that's still a very real thing, and I don't think anybody disagrees that that's got to be a component of it. So it's sitting down and talking about different instances, what we have the ability to communicate, and what we have the ability to address, because there's certain things that are not in our wheelhouse that may be in others, and vice versa.
So conversations have already begun, and there's work with OVP, collaboration with OVP, because I know that there was some skepticism. I don't know, maybe that's too strong of a word, but there's some apprehension in doing that, or there's some silos happening. I don't know, whatever. So have we sat down literally and begun to work that plan and hash that out?
Well, since those meetings, there have been sit-down meetings, and there's been referrals. I mean, there was a referral last week. These referrals continue to have happened.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I think everyone is aware of the intent of the legislation, and there is a desire to work together, and the commission is going to present us with a plan within the next couple months, and 2 months. Well, couple is two. So, yeah, okay. So with that, not a couple, 3 months. Yeah. So with that, Alderwoman Lewis would move approval, and hearing no objections, so ordered.